Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USN Defiance watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. The morning had started like any other patrol day around Earth's orbit, but everything changed when the sensors began screaming warnings. 12 enormous ships appeared out of nowhere, dropping out of what looked like tears in space itself. Each alien vessel was the size of a small moon, and they moved with purpose that made Jake's stomach turn cold. Lieutenant Lisa Chang turned from her communication station with wide eyes. Her hands shook slightly as she reported what the sensors were telling them. The alien ships had just positioned themselves in a perfect circle around Earth, and every single one of them was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls were dark and seemed to eat light rather than reflect it, making them look like holes cut out of space. Jake had been in the Navy for 23 years and had never seen anything that scared him more than these ships. The way they moved was wrong somehow, like they didn't follow the same rules as human technology. No thrust plumes or engine glow, just silent, deadly grace as they took positions that would give them perfect firing solutions on every major city on Earth. The communication officer's voice cracked as she spoke again. Every radio frequency was suddenly filled with the same signal, broadcasting to every government building, military base, and civilian network on the planet at the same time. The technology needed to do that was beyond anything Earth possessed. The main screen flickered and something appeared that made several crew members step backward. The creature was tall and vaguely human in shape, but wrong in every detail that mattered. Its skin was deep purple that looked almost black in the ship's lighting. 4 arms moved with fluid precision, and its eyes glowed like molten gold in a face that held no warmth or mercy. When it spoke, the voice filled the bridge with such authority that some of the younger crew members instinctively stood straighter. This was clearly a being that was used to absolute obedience and had never been told no in its entire existence. The alien introduced itself as High Counselor Vexithera of something called the Galactic Dominion Council. Jake felt his hands clench into fists as the creature explained that humanity had reached some kind of threshold. According to ancient laws that Earth had never heard of, they now had to submit to council authority and provide tribute like all civilized worlds. The demands were breathtaking in their scope and cruelty. 30% of all military vessels would be surrendered immediately. Half of Earth's industrial output would be redirected to serve council needs. Most horrifying of all, 1 million humans would be taken every year to serve the greater galactic community in ways the alien did not bother to explain. Jake watched the faces of his crew as the full weight of the ultimatum sank in. Fear was there certainly, but also something else that made him proud to be human. The same stubborn defiance that had carried their species through every dark moment in their history was already building in their eyes. The alien gave Earth 72 hours to respond, and the transmission ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. For several long moments, nobody moved or spoke as the reality of their situation became clear. Humanity was being given a choice between slavery and extinction by beings with technology that made Earth's best weapons look like Stone Age tools. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Parker broke the silence with a voice that barely qualified as a whisper. His preliminary scans showed that the smallest escort vessel in the alien fleet had more firepower than the entire Pacific Fleet combined. The math was simple and terrifying. Earth could not win a conventional war against these ships. Jake turned to face his crew and saw the question in their eyes. What could they possibly do against beings who could cross interstellar space and make demands with the casual confidence of gods? The smart move would be to surrender and hope for the best. But Jake had not gotten where he was by making smart moves when his people were threatened. He ordered communications to establish direct lines to the Pentagon, the United Nations Security Council, and every major world leader they could reach. If humanity was going to respond to this ultimatum, it would be as a united species, not a collection of squabbling nations. The next 72 hours would determine whether humans would remain free or become servants to alien masters. As the eyed crew rushed to carry out his orders, Jake remained at the viewing screen staring at the alien ships. They hung in space like dark omens, blocking out sections of stars that had watched over Earth since before humans learned to walk upright. The aliens had clearly done this before, probably countless times to countless worlds. They had the process perfected and saw no reason why Earth should be any different. What they did not understand was that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history doing things that should have been impossible. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have wiped them out completely. They had looked at mountains and decided to climb them, oceans and decided to cross them, and eventually the stars themselves, and decided to reach them. The alien council was about to learn that humanity had one quality that seemed to be rare in the galaxy. When faced with impossible odds and certain defeat, humans did not surrender. They got creative, they got angry, and they got dangerous in ways that defied logic and reason. Jake smiled grimly as reports began coming in from around the world. Every major government was responding exactly as he had hoped. Not with acceptance or negotiation, but with the same response that had echoed through human history whenever tyrants made demands. The response that had toppled empires and freed continents and was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about what happened when you threatened humanity's home. The countdown had begun, and Jake intended to make sure that when it ended, the aliens would remember Earth not as another conquered world, but as the place where the Galactic Dominion Council learned that some species could not be broken. The next 3 days would change everything for both humanity and the galaxy itself. President Helen Carter sat at the head of the situation, room table surrounded by the most powerful people on Earth. 3 days had passed since the alien ultimatum, and the room buzzed with tension that could be cut with a knife. Every screen showed different views of the alien ships hanging motionless above Earth like dark clouds, promising a storm that would end civilization. Dr. Marcus Webb stood at the front of the room, holding a tablet filled with analysis that had taken the combined efforts of every major scientific institution on the planet. His face was pale and drawn from 72 hours of constant work, trying to understand technology that seemed to mock human understanding of physics. The numbers he was about to present would crush any hope of conventional resistance. Each alien ship possessed energy shields that could absorb the full force of a nuclear blast without even flickering. Their weapons appeared to work by changing matter at the smallest possible level, turning solid objects into empty space or worse. Any attempt at direct military confrontation would result in Earth's complete destruction within minutes. Prime Minister Elizabeth Hamilton appeared on one of the video screens from London, where her own advisors were reaching the same grim conclusions. Some of her people were suggesting partial compliance, buying time to develop countermeasures, or find some weakness in the alien technology. The idea of surrender, even temporary surrender, made Carter's jaw clench. With barely controlled rage, she had read the intelligence reports gathered from alien broadcasts that leaked through their communication networks. Worlds that submitted to the council became hollow shells of their former selves. Their resources stripped away, their populations scattered across the galaxy as servants and slaves. Entire civilizations reduced to footnotes in council record-keeping systems. General Anthony Davis cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. As chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he commanded respect from everyone present, but what he was about to reveal would change everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. Project Longshot was so classified that only a handful of people in each major nation even knew it existed. The general activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room with technical schematics that looked more like abstract art than weapon designs. For 15 years, the world's best minds had been working on something that most scientists said was impossible. They had been trying to turn the strange rules of quantum physics into a weapon system. Dr. Webb studied the hologram with growing amazement and horror. The project involved weaponizing quantum uncertainty itself, the fundamental randomness that existed at the heart of all matter. The energy requirements alone would drain every power source on Earth, but the potential results were beyond anything conventional weapons could achieve. Davis explained that they had been secretly connecting every major power grid on the planet through hidden quantum conduits. Nuclear reactors, hydroelectric, dam solar arrays, wind farms, and even geothermal plants had all been linked together in a network that could channel unimaginable amounts of energy into a single focused burst. The process would require unanimous agreement from every nuclear power on Earth. If even one nation refused to participate, the entire system would fail catastrophically. They would have exactly 18 minutes from the moment activation began to either save humanity or destroy themselves in the attempt. Carter looked around the room at faces that reflected her own mixture of desperation and determination. The plan was insane by any reasonable standard, but reasonable standards had gone out the window the moment alien ships appeared over Earth. Sometimes the only rational response to an impossible situation was to do something equally impossible. Defense Secretary Patricia Coleman raised the question that everyone was thinking. Even if the weapon worked as designed, they had no guarantee it would be effective against alien technology that was thousands of years more advanced than anything humans had developed. They could sacrifice their entire planet's power, infrastructure, and still face complete annihilation. Dr. Webb pulled up additional calculations showing quantum field interactions that made his head hurt just looking at them. The beauty of quantum weapons was that they did not rely on brute force like conventional arms. Instead, they attacked the fundamental structure of reality itself, making the normal rules of physics become negotiable in localized areas. Foreign Minister Zhang Wei joined the conference from Beijing, bringing news that China's leadership had already voted to participate in whatever plan America proposed. Similar messages were coming in from Moscow, Delhi, London, Paris, and every other major capital. The world had united faster than ever before in human history because the alternative was slavery or extinction. Carter felt the weight of 7 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders as she prepared to make the most important decision in human history. The smart choice would be to surrender and hope the aliens would honor their agreements. The safe choice would be to negotiate for better terms and accept whatever scraps of freedom they were offered. But Helen Carter had not become president by making safe choices. She had grown up poor in Detroit and fought her way through law school and Congress and the campaign trail because she believed that some things were worth fighting for even when the odds were impossible. Freedom was one of those things, and she would rather die as a free human than live as an alien slave. The room erupted in activity as secure communications were established with every world leader who mattered. Russia agreed within minutes, followed by China, India, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Japan, and dozens of smaller nations. In less than an hour, every nuclear power on Earth had committed to the most dangerous gamble in human history. General Davis began the final countdown sequence that would either save humanity or end it. Power plants around the world started connecting to the quantum conduit network, while technicians made last-minute adjustments to systems that had never been tested under actual combat conditions. The margin for error was zero, and the consequences of failure were absolute. Carter stood at the window looking up at the alien ships that had come to collect tribute from a species they clearly considered inferior. In 18 minutes, they would learn that humans had one characteristic their vast databases had failed to account for. When faced with certain death, humans did not surrender quietly. They grabbed the universe by the throat and demanded a better deal even if it killed them. The final preparations were complete, and Earth held its breath waiting to see whether human stubbornness could overcome alien superiority. The answer would come soon enough, and the galaxy would never be the same. High Counselor Vexathara materialized on the bridge of the USN Defiance exactly 72 hours after delivering his ultimatum to the primitive species below. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he surveyed the human vessel that served as their flagship. The technology was laughably crude compared to Council standards, but it would serve as an adequate location to accept their surrender. Admiral Jake Morrison stood waiting with his senior officers arranged behind him in what Vexathera assumed was some kind of ceremonial formation. Captain Nicole Rivers maintained perfect military posture, while Colonel Brandon Hayes kept his hand near his sidearm in a gesture that the alien found amusing. These creatures still thought in terms of individual combat when facing forces that could reshape solar systems. The alien counselor had performed this ritual hundreds of times across dozens of worlds, and it always followed the same pattern. The local leaders would present formal surrender documents while their military forces stood down and prepared for council occupation. Some species wept during the ceremony, while others maintained dignity, but all eventually accepted their new role as servants to the greater galactic order. Vexathera gestured dismissively with two of his forearms as he addressed the human admiral. His voice carried the bored tone of someone going through motions that had long since lost any meaning or challenge. The species below had exactly the same choice as every other world the Council had encountered: submission or complete annihilation. Morrison straightened his uniform and looked directly into those glowing golden eyes with an expression that made Vexathera pause slightly. Most species showed proper fear and respect when facing Council authority, but this human seemed almost Relaxed as if he were about to deliver good news rather than accept defeat, the Admiral held up a single sheet of paper and began reading in a clear, steady voice that was being broadcast across every communication channel on Earth and transmitted directly to the alien fleet. Vexathara expected the usual formal language of capitulation with careful diplomatic phrases designed to preserve some small measure of dignity. Instead, Morrison read exactly 7 words that would echo through galactic history for centuries to come. Humanity acknowledged the Council ultimatum and responded with a simple phrase that roughly translated as a suggestion that the aliens should relocate themselves to the mythical realm of eternal punishment that appeared in many human religious traditions. Vexathara felt his expression shift from bored superiority to genuine confusion as the full meaning of the human response became clear. In all his centuries of service to the Council, he had never encountered a species that responded to overwhelming force with crude insults and defiant laughter. The concept was so alien to his experience that he wondered if translation errors were causing misunderstandings. The human admiral continued speaking with the same calm tone he might use to discuss weather conditions or supply requisitions. He explained that humans possessed a complete understanding of the forces arrayed against them, and had reached their decision through careful consideration of all available options. Their response was not based on ignorance or false hope, but on fundamental characteristics that defined their species. Morrison stated with absolute conviction that humans did not bow to superior force and never had throughout their entire evolutionary history. They had faced extinction events, ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and wars that should have wiped them out completely, yet somehow they always found ways to survive and eventually thrive. Vexathara spread all 4 arms wide in a gesture that might have been laughter among his own species. The human defiance was noted and would be remembered as their final act of freedom before the Council demonstrated why resistance was always futile. He ordered his fleet to begin the cleansing process that would reduce Earth's population to more manageable levels. The massive Council ships powered up their weapon systems with energy patterns that made local space-time bend and waver around their hulls. Planet-killing weapons that had reduced entire worlds to lifeless rocks began charging with the slow, deliberate precision of an execution. Earth had minutes left before experiencing the full weight of galactic civilization. But as the alien weapons prepared to fire, something unprecedented was happening across the human homeworld, from research stations buried deep in Antarctic ice to observation posts on the highest mountain peaks. Every human settlement was responding to their species' impending doom in exactly the same way. 7 billion humans were laughing with genuine joy and amusement as if they had just witnessed the greatest comedy performance in galactic history. It was not the hysterical laughter of despair or the bitter laughter of defeat, but the deep, satisfied laughter of a species that had just successfully completed the most elaborate practical joke ever attempted. Children laughed in schoolyards while their teachers tried to maintain order. Scientists laughed in laboratories while monitoring readings that should have terrified them. Soldiers laughed in bunkers while checking weapons they knew would be useless. Even world leaders laughed in secure facilities while watching displays that showed their imminent destruction. The sound of human laughter filled every radio frequency and communication channel, creating a symphony of defiance that reached the alien ships and confused their crews beyond measure. Council databases contained no reference to species that responded to extinction with entertainment, as if the entire situation was exactly what they had been hoping would happen. Vexathara demanded an explanation for this bizarre behavior, but Morrison simply smiled and pointed toward Earth, where energy readings were beginning to spike beyond anything the Council sensors could properly measure. Power grids across the planet were connecting in patterns that violated several known laws of physics, while underground facilities activated systems that should not have been possible with human technology. The Admiral explained that humans possessed one quality that seemed rare in the galaxy, and had apparently never been encountered by the mighty Council. When faced with impossible odds and certain defeat, humans did not surrender or despair. Instead, they got creative, they got angry, and they got dangerous in ways that defied logic and universal constants. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, machines that had been built in absolute secrecy were beginning to hum with power drawn from every nuclear reactor, solar panel, hydroelectric dam, and geothermal vent on the planet. Quantum conduits were channeling energy through pathways that existed in dimensions the Council had forgotten could be accessed by primitive species. Morrison informed the alien counselor that humanity was about to demonstrate why their species had survived everything the universe had thrown at them throughout their history. The lesson was about to begin, and the galaxy would never forget what happened when someone made the mistake of threatening Earth. The tactical officer aboard Vexthara's flagship turned from his station with confusion written across his reptilian features. His instruments were detecting massive energy buildups across the human homeworld, but the patterns made no sense according to any known weapon configuration in the Council databases. The readings suggested power levels that should have been impossible for a species that had barely achieved interstellar flight. Vexthara moved to the tactical display with all four arms working frantically across the control interfaces. His centuries of military experience had taught him to recognize every type of weapon system used by advanced civilizations, but what he was seeing defied classification. The energy signatures were unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The alien counselor demanded explanations from his crew, but they could only shake their heads in bewilderment. Their most advanced sensors were detecting power flows that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics, while underground installations across Earth activated systems that should not have existed for another 1,000 years of human development. Then something happened that struck fear into the heart of every alien aboard the Council fleet. Across the entire planet Earth, every nuclear reactor, every power plant, every solar panel, and every source of electrical energy suddenly fell completely silent. For one terrifying moment that stretched toward eternity, the human homeworld went completely dark. The silence was more frightening than any weapon discharge because it suggested preparation for something beyond the Council's understanding. Civilizations did not voluntarily shut down their entire power infrastructure unless they were about to channel that energy into something that required every available source of electricity on their world. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a hidden facility that had been carved from solid rock below the particle accelerator complex that humans called CERN, Dr. Susan Kelly watched displays that showed readings beyond anything her instruments were designed to measure. She spoke into her headset with forced calm, while her hands shook from exhaustion and terror. Power coupling had been successful across all continental grids, and the quantum entanglement field was stabilizing exactly as the theoretical models had predicted. She informed Admiral Morrison that he had 17 minutes and 37 seconds before the field either saved humanity or destroyed the planet in ways that would make alien weapons seem gentle by comparison. On the bridge of the USN Defiance, Morrison felt the ship itself begin to vibrate, as space-time around Earth started bending in directions that violated several fundamental laws of physics. The quantum conduits were channeling power through dimensions that existed between normal reality, creating effects that made the universe itself uncertain about what was actually possible. Vexthara demanded to know what the humans had done as his confident demeanor cracked for the first time in centuries of Council service. His ships were beginning to register readings that suggested local space was becoming unstable in ways that his science officers claimed were theoretically impossible, even with the most advanced technology. Morrison smiled with grim satisfaction as he explained that humanity had done something the Council had never expected from a primitive species. They had weaponized uncertainty itself, turning the strange rules of quantum physics into a defense system that challenged the basic structure of reality in the local area around Earth. The space surrounding the planet began to shimmer like heat, waves rising from summer pavement as quantum fields intersected and amplified each other through carefully designed resonance patterns. Reality became fluid as probability curves collapsed, and the very nature of existence in the immediate area became subject to negotiation rather than fixed physical laws. Captain Nicole Rivers stepped forward to address the alien counselor with the confidence of someone who had helped plan humanity's impossible gamble. She explained that they were risking their entire planet on something more powerful than theoretical physics, something that the universe had never been able to break despite billions of years of trying. Human stubbornness was the one force that consistently defeated logic, reason, and overwhelming odds throughout their species' history. It had carried them through ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended their civilization dozens of times. Now it was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about what happened when someone threatened their home. Vexthara ordered his fleet to fire their planet-killing weapons, hoping to end the human experiment Before it could reach completion, beams of pure destruction lanced out from the Council ships carrying enough energy to crack planetary crusts and boil away oceans, leaving nothing but lifeless rock floating in space. The weapons struck Earth's quantum uncertainty field, and something impossible happened that would be studied by galactic scientists for millennia to come. The destruction beams simply ceased to exist as their energy patterns unraveled when probability itself rejected their reality. The laws of physics had become optional in the space around Earth. Morrison opened a communication channel to the alien fleet and began explaining something about humans that no galactic civilization had ever encountered before. They did not just fight against superior enemies, they innovated. They did not just resist overwhelming force, they revolutionized the battlefield. When someone threatened their home, they did not simply defend it, they rewrote the fundamental rules of engagement. 3 of the Council ships began to fade out of existence, not destroyed, but convinced by quantum uncertainty that they had never been there in the first place. The remaining vessels found their hyperspace drives opening portals to random locations throughout the galaxy, or possibly other galaxies entirely. As space-time became confused about concepts like distance and direction, the alien counselor raged that what he was witnessing was completely impossible, as his own flagship began phasing in and out of visible reality. No species could alter the fundamental constants of local space-time because such power belonged only to beings that had transcended physical existence entirely. Morrison agreed cheerfully that the Council was absolutely correct about the impossibility of what they were experiencing. No normal species could manipulate reality at such a basic level, but humans were not just any species. They were the ones who had looked at fire and decided to carry it across continents. They were the ones who had looked at oceans and decided to cross them in wooden boats. They were the ones who had looked at the sky and decided to claim it with metal wings. Now they were the species that had looked at the laws of physics and decided those laws needed editing. The quantum field had 10 minutes remaining before it would either dissipate safely or tear apart the local solar system. But those 10 minutes were enough to change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Dr. Susan Kelly's voice crackled through the communication system from her bunker beneath the Earth as the quantum field reached maximum intensity with only 16 minutes remaining before automatic shutdown. The underground facility shook with vibrations that seemed to come from the fabric of space itself, as reality struggled to maintain coherence in the face of humanity's impossible weapon. High Counselor Vexthera watched in growing horror as his supposedly invincible fleet began experiencing what human scientists were calling aggressive quantum decoherence. Systems that had functioned flawlessly for thousands of years suddenly forgot how to work as the laws of physics became more like polite suggestions in the space around Earth. Energy shields that had protected Council ships through countless battles flickered between existing and not existing, while weapon systems fired backwards through time or sideways into parallel dimensions. Navigation computers began reporting that they were simultaneously in 17 different locations, while engineering crews discovered that their faster-than-light drives had forgotten what the concept of speed was supposed to mean. The alien counselor's tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic that 3 more ships had simply vanished from sensors, not destroyed, but apparently convinced by quantum uncertainty that they had never been built in the first place. The remaining vessels found themselves drifting helplessly as their propulsion systems became confused about which direction qualified as forward. Vexthera screamed orders for immediate retreat, but his commands were largely meaningless when the ships receiving them could no longer agree on basic concepts like location direction or the passage of time. The quantum field had expanded beyond Earth's atmosphere, trapping the Council fleet in a bubble of space where mathematics had become optional. Admiral Morrison opened a final communication channel to address the scattered remnants of the alien fleet with the satisfaction of someone who had just pulled off the greatest military victory in human history. He wanted to make sure the survivors understood exactly what had happened and why they would never make the mistake of threatening Earth again. He explained with cheerful precision that the Council had made a fundamental error in their assessment of human capabilities. They had assumed that a young species would respond to overwhelming force with either submission or conventional resistance, but they had failed to account for humanity's most dangerous characteristic. Humans did not simply accept the universe As they found it instead, they grabbed reality by the throat and demanded better terms. Even when logic suggested such demands were impossible, they had spent their entire evolutionary history doing things that should have killed them, and somehow turning those experiences into advantages that made them stronger. The alien counselor's flagship continued to phase in and out of visible reality, as Vexithara desperately tried to maintain some semblance of command authority over a fleet that was being scattered across space-time by forces beyond his comprehension. His science officers were reporting readings that suggested local physics had been suspended indefinitely. Morrison continued his explanation with the patience of a teacher, addressing particularly slow students. He wanted the council to understand that this demonstration was not just about defending Earth, but about establishing new rules for how advanced civilizations would interact with humanity going forward. The quantum weapon had proven that humans possessed the ability to alter fundamental constants of reality itself when sufficiently motivated. This meant that any future attempts at conquest or coercion would be met with increasingly creative responses that challenged the basic assumptions about how the universe was supposed to work. With 8 minutes remaining in the quantum field's duration, Vexithara made a desperate transmission to whatever ships in his fleet were still capable of receiving communications. His voice carried the weight of complete defeat as he authorized a classification that had never been used in Council history. Humanity was now classified as a Class 12 anomalous species, requiring immediate and permanent quarantine protocols. Under no circumstances should this species be contacted again until they developed beyond the Council's current understanding of reality, which given recent events might take several million years. The surviving Council ships that had not been scattered across space-time managed to retreat beyond the quantum field's influence, but their faster-than-light drives were operating on severely reduced capacity. They limped away at sublight speeds, carrying a message that would transform galactic politics forever. Earth was officially off-limits to all Council operations, and any civilization that chose to interact with humans did so at their own considerable risk. The small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system had just redefined what it meant to be a spacefaring species by proving that superior technology meant nothing when faced with opponents who could rewrite physics. As the quantum field finally dissipated, Morrison stood on the observation deck watching the last alien ships disappear into the depths of space. The weapon had worked perfectly, and Earth remained free. But the real victory was not in defeating the Council fleet, but in sending a message that would echo throughout the galaxy for generations. 6 months later, Morrison found himself aboard humanity's first quantum drive starship, the UES Audacity, as it prepared to carry Earth's new message to civilizations across the galaxy. The crew consisted entirely of volunteers for what was being called the most dangerous mission in human history, but applications had numbered in the millions. Lieutenant Commander Patricia Stone reported that they were receiving long-range communications from 17 different alien civilizations, and the messages all contained the same basic request. Every major power in the local galactic neighborhood wanted to know if humanity was accepting applications for alliance memberships. Morrison smiled as he looked out at stars that no longer seemed quite so distant or threatening. The galaxy had learned that humans were not just another primitive species to be conquered or ignored, but potential partners who brought unique capabilities to any relationship. He instructed Stone to tell the alien civilizations that Earth would consider their proposals. However, any alliance with humanity would come with one absolutely non-negotiable condition that applied to all future relationships between Earth and galactic civilization. Nobody would bow to anybody ever again, regardless of technological superiority or military advantage. As the UES Audacity engaged its quantum drive and disappeared into a region of space where the word impossible had been permanently retired, the galaxy began adapting to a new reality. For the first time in recorded history, the universe itself was holding its breath to see what humans would do next. The Council had demanded tribute from a species they considered inferior and primitive. Humanity's answer had indeed shaken the stars and established Earth as a power that would reshape galactic civilization through sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations that others considered absolute.